Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for March 27th, 2025. At least that's when I'm filming it, which is already pretty late in the month for, a second out of three updates for March. But I do have difficulty sometimes keeping on a good schedule with these AM readings, and this month and this last week have turned out to be a little more challenging than I thought they would. Within the last week, my great aunt's health went downhill, and she passed away. Not generally unexpected, but the specific timing. I guess like when it comes to hospice care, sometimes it's like hurry up and wait. And we got to the end, and then I had to go fly to the Midwest for the funeral, and I saw my family in this really intense couple of days, and now I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things a little bit. But yeah, it's been a weird month, definitely, and a weird week. And I figure I'll only share a couple of brief things here right now. I'm going to start, as always, with a short story from a literary journal, and I am currently reading from the New England Review, volume 45.3. And we've returned to the world of kind of flash fiction that reads like writing exercises. Again, every paragraph, which isn't even indented, has a heading over it, and then a block paragraph all about this friendship. The story is called, well, actually it's called From Tidal Lock, but actually the from is just indicating that these snippets are from another longer piece called Tidal Lock by Lindsay Hill. And all of these little snippets are about like a really complicated and challenging friend of the POV narrator. And also all of the headings in general seem to have something to do with being near the tides. Some of them are more nautical, and some are more like if you are, in the area and like going to a motel maybe. This is not really my favorite type of storytelling. Like I can maybe should give myself more time to bask in, intriguing language for its own sake, but really I'm very drawn. I've always been drawn. I feel, very on point right now with being drawn to narrative storytelling. Not a lot of bells and whistles, just, narrative storytelling and nuanced characters, please. So this one wasn't necessarily for me. And staying with short stories, I am slowly reading From Company by Shannon Sanders. This is actually what I picked for my quarterly TBR game, the TBR spin, so I'm hoping to read this before quickly moving into my spring quarter. So these are interconnected short stories about an African-American family in the DC area, and I think they're in other areas as well. This first story is called The Good, Good Men, and it tracks these two brothers who are involved with this woman who makes questionable choices about the men she gets involved with, and then, allows access to her home. And their good qualities are really cleaning up after her and making sure she's not being taken advantage of by some bums. And so, I mean, yeah, this definitely is a story with, intriguing, nuanced characters, although I kind of feel like maybe I'll be more invested as the stories go on. That, even though this is a short story collection, technically, it's about a connected group of characters, so that maybe I'm going to connect to it more myself, kind of more like a longer novel form. We shall see. I'll be checking back as I hopefully read more into this. A book I finished this week is The Diplomat's Daughter by Karin Tanabe. This book has been on my Goodreads TBR for a long enough time that it made my resolutions list, that every year I try to skim the top of my Goodreads TBR. So anyway, this is a World War II story. And we're predominantly following this titular character. Her name is Emi Kato. She is the daughter of a Japanese diplomat, and she's a very worldly character. She has lived in various places in Europe and then in the US, and I should mention that this is a historical story taking place during World War II. And in fact, her father is stationed in the US, and her family is living there after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. which means that they're pretty much immediately put under house arrest, and they're moved around to different locations. One of them being the Greenbrier Hotel, which actually I'd read about last month in a book that also took place during World War II. And yeah, they used that hotel to intern some of the diplomats, Japanese, Italian, and German, at World War II. And anyway, Emmy and her mother were supposed to leave with the father for Japan, but Emmy got sick with tuberculosis, so they had to stay in the U.S., and they ultimately ended up in a Japanese-American internment camp in Texas. And that's where Emmy meets up with Christian, and Christian is a German-American sort of teenager. Emmy's like in her early 20s, and Christian is like 17. And I think with German Americans during World War II, by and large, they were left alone. This wasn't like the situation with the Japanese Americans, but, you know, if somebody were to rat you out or, you know, go on a witch hunt, you know, some German and Italian Americans did end up in the internment camps. And in this case, Christian's father was a very successful factory owner, and his second in command decided to take control of the business by, you know, making up a fake story about Nazi sympathies. And so Christian and his family were sent to this camp, and he meets Emmy, and there's a little bit of a romance, which, you know, the writing of it, I don't know, the whole setup of it is eye-rolly, but that's kind of the point, is to, you know, connect them in this way. And meanwhile, Emmy is actually still kind of lusting after an old fling from the time several years ago, or like a handful of years ago. Her father was stationed in Austria, and she fell in with this Austrian Jewish student named Leo. And as the war, you know, starts, their letters are not being sent to one another, and she'd been, you know, in love with Leo, but now Christian's come along, and so, you know, now it's almost like a love triangle, I guess, except they're never all in the same place at the same time. And we ultimately track Leo a little bit through the war. He and his family end up in Shanghai, actually thanks very much in part due to Emmy's father, who's able to pull some strings to get them out of Austria, you know, during a time when the Jews are being rounded up. And so they end up as refugees in Shanghai. And Christian ends up joining the U.S. Army, actually, rather than being deported back to Germany with his parents. And then Emmy is, you know, ultimately leaves with her mother for Japan and goes through the war in Japan. And so obviously it's a time of great struggle. There's poverty and food shortages and all sorts of trauma, and they're all going through it separately, and then we kind of see where they end up at the end of the war. I think Emmy and Christian's parts were stronger. You know, I expected to connect more to Leo with, you know, his Jewish heritage, and I read a lot of Jewish fiction, and that's why I put this on my list of books. But I actually thought his story was, you know, a lot more truncated, and I don't know, I questioned some aspects of it, maybe a little nitpicky, and ultimately I was engaged enough with the story that I figured I'd give it the 4 stars. But you know, parts of this did feel a bit overwrought, even for an overwrought time, and like leaning a little bit into melodrama even. But again, maybe I am being nitpicky because this is, you know, a time for drama. But yeah, I really liked being able to follow 3 characters who have very different experiences but similar, how they intersect, and like it just is a nod to, you know, how sprawling World War II was, but it's also a nod to just how horrible these how horrible war and conflict is to everyone, especially to civilians and to the families of diplomats and what have you. And that's a lesson that unfortunately seems to continue until this day, to realize just how devastating war can be for people, and also political strife, and how easy it is in authoritarian governments and governments that are, you know, maybe leaning more authoritarian because of the war, how easy it is to, you know, take away liberties, even in America, to take away people's civil liberties. So these, you know, themes continue onward into this time. So I guess that, you know, reading this in Trump's second administration also had an impact of its own. And the final book I'll show you from Audible is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. This is a portal story novel where we jump from time period to time period in these interconnected stories that are nevertheless generations apart often, or centuries apart, I should say, and they are all sort of linked together by this one raindrop. And so we start actually in the far past, in the Assyrian Empire, and then the other three stories are fairly more recent, one being in the 19th century and two being in the 21st. And that is all I will say about this book right now, because I am reading it for the BookTube Prize. So the BookTube Prize was started by Robert Sheard back in 2019. The purpose of the prize is for the literary bookternet to come together to rate the best in literary fiction and nonfiction published in the U.S. in English the year before. And so this year we are reading 2024 releases, and we are at the tail end of the first round, the octafinals round, our first round of whittling down the long lists. And time is a-ticking. But anyway, I am reading from Fiction Group E. And so I am taking this book and 5 others, and I have to rate them against each other for my ballot, which is due very soon. But I can't talk to you about any of that right now, as the round is active and I am doing my reading. I'm zipping my lips on my thoughts. I did actually give some preliminary thoughts, pre-reading thoughts on these books in a video that I'll link down to below, as well as to more information on the BookTube Prize. So that about covers it for me. Hopefully this was pretty short and sweet. Sometimes I end up rambling anyway, but I do have to get back to work and other things going on. And so hopefully I'll get this up quickly, because I also want to squeeze in more videos this month. And probably the easiest thing for me to do next is my monthly March book haul. So stay tuned for another quick little book haul video. I hope you are all enjoying your reading as the first quarter of 2025 draws to a close. Kind of crazy to think about, but in my area, in the DC area, at least it feels like the start of a new quarter, because spring is definitely coming upon us and flower trees are blooming, and hopefully I'll get some cherry blossoms into an upcoming video. We shall see. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.